Bloomberg Politics presents live at Hempstead Hall. It's Huckabee, the heaviest jabbing, most ferocious licks, and the wildest riffing.
Our farmers and ranchers provide food and fiber.
It all goes down at the University of Arkansas Community College in Hope, Arkansas. Hope and Flange. With special opening act, Tony Orlando.
Tie a yellow ribbon around the old tree. It's been 3 long years. Do you still want me? And if I don't see a ribbon around the old tree.
Happy Cinco de Mayo, sports fans, or as Jeb Bush likes to call it, Cinco de Mayo. But enough about Jeb Bush. Today was all about Governor Mike El Diablo Huckabee at Hempstead Hall at the University of Arkansas Community College in the town that both Huckabee and Bill Clinton call home. The show led off with the aforementioned Tony Orlando, although sadly without Dawn. Tony Orlando was followed by Mike Huckabee's wife, Janet, and then a whole lot of talk from Pastor Huck himself about going from hope to higher ground.
You know, it was 8 years ago that a young, untested, inexperienced, and virtually unknown freshman senator made great speeches about hope and change. But 8 years later, our debt's more than doubled. America's leadership in the world is completely evaporated. And the country is more polarized than ever in my lifetime. We were promised hope, but it was just talk. And now we need the kind of change that really could get America from hope to higher ground.
Mark, he still believes in a place called hope. As George Oscar Bluth would say, how'd he do?
Look, he was more folksy than fiery, and 8 years is a long time for him to come back with basically the same act and a lot more competition in Iowa. Last time he had to beat Mitt Romney in Iowa, a Mormon from Massachusetts. Now he's going to have to beat people like Ted Cruz and Rand Paul and a host of other candidates, Rick Santorum. So he did great. I thought he did great. But again, more fiery, more folksy than fiery, and I think he's going to need more fire.
And largely substance-free. Again, people are kind of substance-free in their announcements. I just say, you know, he's got two things. He's got the evangelical thing, where it's just the core of his support. That's what you're talking about in Iowa in particular. This was a speech that had a lot more economic populism, and that was a part of what he ran on in 2007, 2008. I'm wondering whether he made a strategic choice today, downplayed the social conservatism, played up the populism. I wonder if that's a smart choice, but it's clearly the card he played today.
As we say in Arkansas, the man can talk the owls down from the trees. Yeah. But it was, to me, more like a corporate paid speech than it was, again, about a guy on a mission to win the nomination, win the White House, and renew America. I know he believes in that, but I didn't think he showed as much zeal as he's going to need to win in a crowded field. Well,
and that plays into an overriding question that we've been banding about for a while, which is he's been a little low-key so far. We'll see what he brings to the table.
The channel Fox News gave Huckabee all the coverage they could, even taking his announcement live over President Obama nominating a new chairman of the Joint Chiefs. That makes sense. Huckabee used to work at Fox, and they hired him. He quit the news cabler in early January so he could start running the run-up to his run for president. Since then, he's been like a good Milford man, neither seen nor heard, largely skipping the cattle calls in Iowa and such that the other candidates have all attended. So, John, out there today, what did we learn from Huckabee and about Huckabee that we didn't know before in terms of his posture about running?
Well, it's funny. I think there's a question about whether we learned much about him that we didn't know before. This is, again, except for the emphasis shift that I talked about a second ago, this is very much still the Mike Huckabee from 2008. There's not much that's new there. And again, I think that's a big strategic challenge for him because he is surrounded by fresh new faces.
If today was a roadmap to how he's going to run, even though he did the announcement in Arkansas, it was a lot more about hope and about his biography than it was about his governing record. I thought, given the attacks on his governing record last time, as his term in Arkansas, he might today try to paint a picture of his success as a conservative governor. Barely did that today.
He's not the only guy who's done this so far in their announcement speeches, but clear jabs both at the Clintons and at Jeb Bush, implicit but clear. And the populism is partly substantive. He has views about trade deals and views about Wall Street that are outside the Republican mainstream, but also tonal, talking about him not having very much money, talking about him not being from a dynasty, the talk about the Washington Wall Street corridor of power, decrying big money and corruption. And
it looks like when the other candidates talk about entitlement reform, he'll be talking about saving Social Security in a different way.
Absolutely right. Workers first. The Republican establishment and the media give Mike Huckabee about as good a chance of winning the Republican nomination as Lance Armstrong has at passing a polygraph. They don't consider him a first-tier candidate. It's unclear whether they even consider him a second-tier candidate. And the third tier is basically Jim Gilmore and my dog Fergus. So Huckabee did, however, win the Iowa caucuses in 2008, and he was the overall delegate runner-up to John McCain. So, Mark, let's take him seriously. Let's say he has a chance to win the nomination, unlike a lot of people, what they think. What's his path?
Keeps many of the tens of thousands he won in winning the caucuses 8 years ago. New Hampshire becomes a contest in a different lane, wins South Carolina, and then, as one of the few Southern candidates in the race, and really the only pure Southern Paul in the race, cleans up in March and when there are a lot of Southern primaries.
Right, but it all starts with the thing you first said. It all starts in Iowa. For him, more than any other candidate. There are a lot of candidates for Iowa is important. For him, more than any other candidate. He doesn't win Iowa, he's done.
I disagree. I think if Iowa's a jumble, and it could be, the winner of Iowa might win with 21%. I don't think he needs to win Iowa. If he can be alive in the Southern primaries, he can win the nomination.
Unless he's extraordinarily well-funded, I just think that the blow to having won it with a record number of votes 8 years ago or 7 years ago, and then to fail this time, I think it would gut him.
I think the rules are different. The early states aren't going to necessarily matter as much. They could, but they aren't necessarily. And how much money do you need? If you got 16 candidates buying television time, I don't know that television time is going to matter as much as campaign skills. He stars in the debates. He did 8 years ago. He'll star in the debates again.
But, you know, he's got to have the money to be able to play later. The long game thesis is that if you don't have a lot of money at the beginning, you get money from momentum of winning one of the early states. So if he doesn't win Iowa, I don't know where the money comes from where he can compete in South Carolina and certainly in those big multi-state primaries where he's got potentially a lot of support among Southern states.
Lots of candidates in this race want to get Jeb Bush one-on-one. Mike Huckabee against Jeb Bush one-on-one.
That's a fight he wants.
You watch. All right. Couldn't help but feel today that it was a little bit like Back to the Future. The year 2000. Al Gore was in Iowa today. Hillary Clinton's doing a listening tour. And Mike Huckabee, as we said, back in Arkansas. So it was fitting and proper that two figures who played a big role in the last century popped up with some rare print interviews today. Late today, Al Gore began a 3-day trip in Iowa. He told Breon Fathensteele of the Des Moines Register that Iowans should pressure presidential candidates to put climate change high up in their platforms. Chelsea Clinton told the Washington Post in Africa that her family is no stranger to scrutiny and defended the foundation. John, what do you make of these two interviews?
Well, one of them, 100% the latter, Chelsea Clinton, not surprising at all. She's in Africa. She got asked by some questions. She said some things that are, wholly expected. What is Al Gore doing in Iowa if not stirring up trouble?
3 days. He does this thing all over the country. He does workshops on the environment, and he wants it to be part. He said in this interview he wants the environment to be part of the candidate's agenda.
I understand. But it's it's Iowa. It's on the brink of a presidential campaign. He does clearly care about climate change, but Al Gore has a mischievous side, and there's a little bit of him. He knows what kind of coverage.
There are Democrats who think Hillary Clinton should get a challenge, and there are a lot, even who support her, who think if she did, she could lose. All right, up next, we break down the guns, the grit, and the gravy for Mike Huckabee's speech.
Gravy.
Then I go literally inside a Hillary Clinton campaign video to fact-check the fact-checker. But first, the splendid, loquacious, larger-than-life former Southern governor who's long had his eyes on the White House. An exclusive interview with the man in the news, the Haley Barbour, after this.
Our guest tonight once told us that, quote, you don't learn much from the second kick of a mule, and our in-house dialecticians and lexicographers are still trying to figure out exactly what that means. Former Mississippi governor and National Republican Committee Chairman Haley Barbour, thanks for coming back on the show. Governor, I want to start with the man of the hour. Other than yourself, you're always the man of the hour. Mike Huckabee, man of the hour. How do you think you did today?
Well, I actually was at work. I was traveling part of the day. But look, he's a very attractive candidate. He's well known to a lot of people. He's got a real starting place. I think he's going to be a candidate that has a real chance to catch on. Now, we have a very large field, a lot of people with records of achievement, including Mike Huckabee, and no true front runner. So, anybody that could claims today they can tell you who's going to win the nomination will lie to you about other stuff. But I do think Huckabee has a starting place. He won Iowa last time. A lot of people see him on TV a lot, and he's very likable. He's not somebody who's got a chip on his shoulder.
Governor, just to clarify, I just need a short answer for this. You haven't endorsed a candidate in the race so far, correct?
No,
okay.
No, haven't. Didn't in 2008 and 12. I did not either one of those years.
So I'm not asking you to play favorites in any way, but just so far this year in your big field of 15 or so candidates, who's having a good year so far and why?
Well, look, as I say, a lot of them have really something to offer. Yesterday, 2 candidates announced that are probably among the least known, Carly Fiorina and Dr. Ben Carson. And I will tell you, Dr. Ben Carson has a phenomenal life story. The head of pediatric neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins, one of the premier medical centers in the United States, when he's 33 years old. Carly Fiorina, an incredibly successful businesswoman.
Governor, I know they've
very articulate.
I know they've got great resumes, and so do a lot of the other people. I take your point. I'm just wondering if anybody's done anything this year in the context of the run-up to either formal candidacies or the 5 or 6 who've announced, who you would single out and say, well, they're being good on this issue or they're playing politics smart this way. Not endorse them, but just single them out.
Several people have done some good things. I don't think anybody's really done anything bad. I don't think anybody's done any permanent damage to his or herself.
But nobody stands out to you on any particular issue or tactics or strategy that you'd say, well, that's smart, that's positioned them better than they were on January 1st?
Well, I think in the last couple of years, Rand Paul has worked very hard for people to recognize that he is a tolerant person. That's not to say he's a moderate, because he's not a moderate, but he is somebody who is temperate. And he's spoken to a lot of groups that don't agree with him. I think that's been good for him. I think it's been good for Chris Christie to just be somebody who says, I'm going to tell the truth, whether it's popular or not. I thought his entitlement speech was something smart because it emphasizes something people already think about him. He'll tell you the truth, whether you like it or not. I think Jeb Bush has been very smart to say, I'm going to be for what I'm for. I know that there are people that don't agree with me on some things, but I'm not going to deviate from that. Scott Walker, I thought, got off to a very good start. He's got a good political personality. He's a good political performer. And, of course, he was born in Iowa. I mean, there are a lot of people, as you can tell, that I think have done some things right.
That was a good list.
And it's a long way from here to there. Yeah. This campaign's in front of us. Let's don't forget that.
Let me shift the focus to the other side of the aisle, Governor, and ask you about Hillary Clinton. There's been a lot. She's been having a lot of bad press coverage. A lot of questions have been raised, first starting with the email controversy, now moving on to stuff related to the foundation. I'm curious whether you can point to some specific things that you find troubling either in the book that's been written, in the news accounts. What are the specific things that trouble you in this current wave of controversy around her?
Well, the question is, are the Clintons going to be held to the same standard as everybody else? I mean, that's more troubling. A lot of these things have been known before, though I never had any idea that there was anybody in the United States that had to have their own server because they didn't think their cell phone could get messages from 2 different servers. Well, funny, mine does, even in Yazoo City, Mississippi. But the contributions to the campaign, to the foundation, I have spoken for the Clinton Foundation. Let me just make that plain. Didn't get paid a penny for doing it, by the way. Spoken for them twice. But when I look back at Mitt Romney saying before his campaign started that he reported $347,000 in speaking fees for the entire year before, and the Huffington Post ridiculed him for saying that's not very much money. President Clinton averaged $12 million a year, $12 million a year, the whole time that Mrs. Clinton was Secretary of State, and seems to have a lot of people in the press going to give him a free pass.
Governor, I may take your point that it's early in the campaign, but I want to ask you now to weigh in on something we ask a lot of our guests. Will Hillary Clinton, if she's a Democratic nominee, be easy to beat for the Republicans or hard to beat?
Elections after a party has had the White House for 8 years are typically very close, unless there's some big event like a recession that starts in September before the election in
in November, and even though the recession, we now look back and say it started in December of 07, it was the fall of 08 before the public really felt it. That was a very close election until then. 2000 was very close. You know, you go back, Bill Clinton got elected president with 43% of the vote. So usually after an 8-year election, it's very competitive. I think this will be competitive. I don't think Secretary Clinton will be easy to beat, but I don't think that she is anything like unbeatable. I think we're going to have a very competitive election, and I think the Republicans got a very good chance of keeping intact the fact that only once since World War II has a party kept the White House for more than 2 terms. And the reason I say that is I don't think the American people want Obama to have a 3rd term.
So, Governor, I guess you're saying she's not going to be easy to beat, but she's beatable.
Yes, sir. That may be a more succinct way than I said it, but you know how us country boys are. It takes us a little while.
Well, it takes a little while. That's a lot prettier coming out of your mouth than out of mine. Governor Haley Barbour, thank you so much for coming on. When we come back, we'll be shucking and clucking some more over Parson Huck. We'll be right back.
Mike Huckabee's latest book is called God, Guns, Grits, and Gravy. Get it? All those start with G. So we gutted his announcement today in a fashion we think the governor would appreciate. Let's start with him talking about using a firearm.
It was here in Hope that I learned how to handle a firearm and a fishing pole, and I spent a lot of hours with both. I got my first BB gun at age 5. It was a Daisy Model 25. I've still got it. It's in mint condition. I learned the basic rules of gun safety, and I never thought about using a firearm to murder someone. I ran trot lines all night at Boat Ark Lake with my dad and grandfather so we could catch catfish that we'd freeze and we'd live off of for weeks. And it was here that I was baptized in the Garrett Memorial Baptist Church after accepting Jesus in a vacation Bible school when I was just 10 years old.
Very personal, very biographical. How much will that help him in Iowa, South Carolina, Mississippi?
Well, yeah, you know, a lot. I mean, look, he's, you know, this is a candidate where, you know, the reason his populism is potentially persuasive is because it's rooted to who he is. And
what about the fact that he's a millionaire now?
Well, you know, as you know, even populists sometimes get rich later on. I mean, look, it's tricky for him, but, you know, he's earned it the hard way. He can say it. He was, in fact, you know, he struggled for a long time. He's got a real rags to riches story, and then there's something to be said for that. And certainly this, the actual policy positions, or at least the ardent support of gun rights that this reflects, will play very well within the Republican.
I just come back to what I said before. He's going up against a much bigger, more talented field of people in his lane in Iowa. It's a great story,
yes,
but he's not connecting it to policy, and I think that's the biggest weakness in the story.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All right, now the fight against Iran.
But we put more pressure on our ally Israel to cease building bedrooms for their families in Judea and Samaria than we do on Iran for building a bomb. When I hear our current president say he wants Christians to get off their high horse so we can make nice with radical jihadists, I wonder if he could watch a Western from the 50s and be able to figure out who the good guys and the bad guys really are. The Ayatollahs of Iran will know that hell will freeze over before they get a nuclear weapon.
So foreign policy was not a particular strength of his last time, and he took some heat on it when he ran in 2008. Does he have, with that kind of rhetoric, an ability to play in the foreign policy derby here?
Look, I don't think so, because I think in the end you have either his national security credentials are relatively weak. He's traveled around the world. He's gone to Israel sometimes. He's gone to Poland.
Commander-in-Chief of the Arkansas National
Guard. But he's, you know, there's that is pure Fox News rhetoric, basically. What he's done is not really gone to foreign policy school at the Kennedy School of Government or at the Woodrow Wilson Institute.
Or sat with George Shultz and Henry Kissinger,
or any
as
of
far
those
as
places.
I know.
What he's done is basically he's picked up a lot of talking points from being on Fox News will that excite some people in the base? I'm sure it will, but I don't think it will meet the bar for commander-in-chief if he ever gets that
polls
close.
are showing foreign policy is a big issue for Republicans. It's going to be an issue in the debates. It's going to be interesting to see if he can compete on those issues as much as he can on some of the social and economic issues in the debates, for sure.
The only saving grace for him is the fact that so few of his competitors have very much in the way of foreign policy expertise either.
Yep. All right, finally, one more bit of Huckabee on the money he needs.
I will be funded and fueled not by the billionaires, but by working people across America who will find out that $15 and $25 a month contributions can take us from hope to higher ground. Now, rest assured, if you want to give $1 million, please do it. But I know most of you can't.
You and I both know that the guy is not all that comfortable talking about money, not just with rich people, but talking about it. And I thought that was one of the more awkward parts of the speech.
Well, he once said to me that he felt more comfortable being in a room. When he went into a big room full of rich people, he felt more a kinship to the bus boys and the waiters than he did to the people that were in the dinner. That's a huge thing. He doesn't like talking to rich people. He doesn't like asking them for money. They don't particularly like him either. The donor class doesn't like the economic populism that he espouses. In this age of the internet, he's potentially, anybody could raise a bunch of money, but he's talked a big game. $25 million he was going to try to get right. We don't know where he is right now.
He's not going to be a huge bundler of $2,700 checks.
No.
Will he be an internet fundraiser, an email fundraiser? Will he have sugar daddies and super PACs? We don't know. But I didn't think today's pitch really positioned himself well there. I think he thinks it's all just going to happen. But I will say, because he's run before, because of his speaking skills, he needs less than almost anybody in the second tier right now to run a strong campaign.
He will get a lot of free media attention. He knows how to work with free media. He is very good on the stump. We've said it over and over again. His communication skills are better than anybody's in the field. But in the end, as he learned in 2008, you got to have some dough. So the question is, will he be able to cobble together enough? I bet right now, if they had if there were a lot of signs that he was going to be able to make that big $25 million nut he talked about, there were a lot of signs of it, they'd be telling us.
He's not going to move up in the polls nationally, I don't think, this year in a big way. He's not going to move up in fundraising. To me, the only way he can fight into the first tier this year, before the caucuses, debates, and if his number moves in Iowa.
Yes.
And it'll be interesting to see if he spends time on the ground as a guy now doing this full time.
Right.
He's been below the radar. Does he come up now and kick it in Iowa? He's headed to Iowa today.
But then he's headed off South Carolina. I don't know. I still think, and again, depending on how much money they have, this announcement was a well-staged thing compared to what he did back in 2007 when he went on Meet the Press, because it was cheap, right? Will he now think he's a national candidate? Is he going to fly around the country, or is he going to go and basically say, camp out in Iowa? I think if he moves the numbers in Iowa, people will start to look pretty seriously at him. If he doesn't, the rest of this year, he could still stay in that second tier.
And I'll just say again, the SEC primary, all those southern states. You got Texans running, Floridians running. He's the southern candidate. All right, up next, a voiceover tease you'll never forget after this. That Clinton cash book is a headache for Hillary Clinton's campaign. Brian Fallon, one of her press secretaries, put out a video rebutting a few of the claims. We fact-checked the fact-check video. You'll see it soon on BloombergPolitics.com.
Tomorrow, we've got our fearless leader and editor-in-chief, John Micklethwaite, on the British elections. And that's pretty better than McConkley's.
Sayonara.